Before we get started, I just wanted to make a quick shout out to Mr. Carter Harkins out of the USA, who left us an awesome 5-star review on iTunes. The topic was deep dives and spot on topics. And Carter said, I really appreciate Matt's ability to get to the heart of a matter and talk about it with kindness and encouragement. He's a great communicator and easy to listen to. I get a lot out of each episode. Thank you very much, Carter. We appreciate that review. And folks, if you'd like to leave us a review, we will read it out. You can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or even Spotify now, and leave us a review there. It does help our rankings, which is why we asked for them. And if you could do that, we would much appreciate it, and we will read it out. Hey Adam, you know what would be a cool idea?
What's that, Matty?
Imagine if you could put together like some sort of competition where you sent a whole bunch of guys overseas for a certain period of time just to really involve in the experience and really, like, I suppose, become part of a community they're living in.
Yeah, great idea. Well, I'm glad that you suggested something, because we're actually putting together a tradie Great Escape competition where we're going to be sending 4 guys, all expenses paid, to an exotic location like Brazil.
What?
So basically it's where the ocean meets the... Yeah, it's going to be a sick experience. So it's a month-long project. So basically 4 guys will go over to exchange their skills for a few hours a day for food, accommodation, tours, the works, you know, a full cultural experience that will change their lives.
How the hell do I enter that competition?
We just got to go to the website for now, travelingtradies.com, pre-register, so your name and your email, and you'll automatically get 10 entries into the competition as an early bird entry. We haven't formally launched the competition, which will be happening in the coming weeks. So, and if you also like and share our website and content, you get more multiple entries. So it's just to build that awareness and share it around, because we really want to get these guys over, film it all, and really get out to the world and show what Traveling Tradies is about.
Okay, well, I'm just going to keep that one really quiet, okay, because I want to win this competition. So I figure the less people I tell about it,
just keep
the better
entering,
off.
Matty. Just keep entering.
This podcast is proudly and very appropriately brought to you by the Sightshed's Ski and Learn program. Now, the Ski and Learn program is an initiative we kicked off a number of years ago, basically as a way that we could help trade business owners travel to amazing world-class locations while at the same time investing in their business. You can find out more about this program through the sightshed.com/events. There's one coming up in February next year. We're going to Hakuba in Japan, which is a world-renowned ski spot. Tickets are filling fast, guys, and hotels need to have their bookings in. So if you do want to come, head across to the sightshed.com/events, click on the link for Ski and Learn 2018, where you can get heaps more information in relation to that. If you've got any questions, you can always reach out to info@sightshed.com. We hope to see you there. It's a great event. Tickets are filling up quick and the doors will be shutting soon. So get along to it. It's a business expense. It's tax deductible. We're skiing one of the best places on the planet and you will absolutely love it. And the content that we're going to be teaching there, guys, is around customer nurturing and the way that you can basically look after your existing customers through automation. So get along to it and you will not regret it.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Sightshed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello listeners, welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Sightshed podcast. I'm your host, Matt Jones, and you're joining us today for a really cool podcast, actually, because we're talking about something that we haven't yet spoken about on the show. I've got Adam Balastro, who's from Traveling Tradies, and he's got a pretty cool story, pretty cool product, and I think it's going to be of big interest to a lot of you guys, especially the ones that are out there that enjoy a bit of traveling. Adam, welcome to the microphone.
Thanks, Matty boy. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
How's things?
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. Just getting over the Stormageddon here in Melbourne. And
the storm that never was.
Yeah, the storm that never was, making sure I wasn't washed away, and here we are.
So, mate, we were connected through... How did we connect? I think you listened to the podcast, is that right?
Yeah, I listened to the podcast, and I just realised that we had a lot of similarities, and there was quite a few things that we worked in the same industry, and we had the same kind of target market, and it was just like, you know, maybe your listeners would be interested in what I had to say and what I had to offer.
I'm sure they would. We do have quite a similar background. I was one of those tradies that I literally finished my licensing course for plumbing on a Wednesday, and I flew out of the country on the Friday, and I didn't come back for 3 years. So
I know the feeling.
I certainly relate to the travelling tradie mindset. And there is a lot of listeners out there that I'm sure have done similar things or in a similar boat. And I think importantly, what I would recommend and what I do recommend to kids that are looking to do that is just certainly get your trade out of the way before you jump ship, because it makes it a lot harder to come back and go after a few years of traveling back into study.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so you had a similar story, yeah?
Yeah, so basically it was the same thing. So when I finished school and I did what everybody did, I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't really have any guidance. So I actually joined the Navy. I did a gap year in the Navy, and it was an interesting year. And it was, I enjoyed everything that they offered and everything that they did, but I didn't really see eye to eye with them. I was trying to conform, but I just couldn't. I always questioned and I asked why, and it usually got me into some strife.
Yeah.
I left the Navy and then went and lived with my cousin Anthony, and he had a roof plumbing business. So I needed to work because I was out of school and poor and nowhere to live. He took me in and I started to work with him. So I worked as a labourer, and then I eventually signed on as an apprentice.
Yeah.
And then it kind of commenced from there. So I became a plumber. I worked all over Oz. I did all forms of plumbing and, certain parts of the apprenticeship. It wasn't an easy, straight 4 years. It was, a company I was working for went under, and I put my apprenticeship on hold. And that's when I went and worked for, a contracting for electrical companies, and as a labourer for chippies, worked in the mines for an engineering company. And then I eventually went back to my apprenticeship. I finished my apprenticeship and continued to work all over Oz,
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that was kind of where I was. And then I got to the end of my tether after nearly 10 years, and I was like, there's got to be more, I was always asking and questioning, like, this can't be it. And I was tired, I was burnt out, I was exhausted. I was on a job site where two guys in 1 week had committed suicide, and that was me just going, you know what, I've got to do something else. And I went home and I did the same thing. I booked a ticket and then left very shortly after and didn't look back for the next 3 years. So
it's funny, actually. When I was just out of school, I was wanting to do my apprenticeship through the military.
Yeah.
And I was pretty set on plumbing, and I did have an interview with the Navy, and but they didn't offer plumbing; they offered refrigeration. So
fridges.
And in which time I got offered an apprenticeship elsewhere, so I took that. But I thought that would have been. I still think I would have enjoyed that.
Yeah. They offer an amazing array of things. It's just in the mindset that I have now, I've always had this mindset, and I just couldn't be accepting of like when to eat, when to sleep, when to do that. I needed my own rhythm, my own routine.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't a match. That's all. That was it. And I made that decision early, and I'm so glad that I did. But I originally went in to study engineering through them, but I did a gap year, and then they offered me 13 years. So basically to study through them and then return service +1. And I was like, look, thanks, but I can't do this for 13 years.
Yeah.
So I started an apprenticeship, and here we are.
Yeah, cool. So I suppose scaling back a little bit, let's talk about that transition into the trade. How did that come about from the first place? Like, you left school and you were, was that always... Did you always want to do engineering, or were you always happy to go into a trade, or like did you just fall into that position through working with your cousin, or what was the go there?
Yeah, so it was basically, for me, it was falling into that position. I hadn't had any, like, when I was super young, I was like, I want to be an actor. That was my thing, right? I don't know why. I was just like, I was fascinated by film. I was in the school plays as like the lead role, and honestly, I loved it. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Then like reality slaps you in the face a little bit, and I didn't really have any proper training or anything like that. And so I decided to go in the Navy. I'd always loved the ocean. I spent a lot of time at the beach, and I thought, ocean, boats, Navy, can't be that hard.
Yeah.
So then I went into the Navy. And then when I left the Navy, and then my beautiful cousin Anthony took me in, and he just goes, look, you need to work. We've got a spot. And I did kind of get, not forced into it, but that was the path that I needed to take. I did what I had to do. And I don't regret it by any means, because I had no other options and I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And sometimes you do have to do what you've got to do, but it leads to other avenues and other opportunities,
So tell us about, I suppose, the transition from working with Anthony, traveling, and then coming back and starting your own business. And then we'll dive in a little bit into, I suppose, what your business, but let's talk about that transition into that mindset.
Yeah, of course. So basically for me, it was before I traveled, I had no idea. I was still in that closed-minded, no perspective of the world mentality. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I always went from jobs to jobs, and I always went from company to company because I always was looking for change. I partied a lot for 4 or 5 years. I used to go out with my friends. Yeah. Thursday to Monday, and I used to party a lot because I was trying to fill the void, man. I had nothing to kind of keep me like fulfilled. So when I finally decided to go overseas, I just went, you know what, I'm going. And it did. I was very spontaneous with my decisions like that. A lot of people look at it and go, oh, you don't really think about things, but I do. When I make a decision, I'm done. So I decided to go overseas. When I was overseas and I started traveling, the first month I was overseas, I was in South America, and I spent a solid chunk of the money that I'd put aside. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to be here, because I'd always intended to go over for 6+ months, if I keep going the way I'm going to be home within a couple of months. Yeah. So I was like, what can I do? And honestly, I'd come in from a surf, and I was in Brazil, and I was coming back from the beach, and I was like, what can I do? And I remember walking up to the hostel that I was staying at, and it was a little bit like, there was some work needing to be done. There was some painting that could have been done. It was a little bit run down. There was a few things. And I remember going to the owner, and I said, hey, just a thought, I'm a qualified plumber, this is what I can do. What about if I tidied up your place a little bit? Could I maybe get some free accommodation?
Yeah.
And I was super surprised. He's like, yeah, for sure. I'd love that. So I literally started doing that after about a month I was in, and I kept progressing from place to place to place, just exchanging my skills. And honestly, the idea for the business that I have now didn't come until after the end of my trip.
Yeah.
So it was a transition that after my trip, I ended up in London, and I was in the supermarket over there, and I saw this guy, and we just got started talking, and he was actually into e-commerce. So the first business that I created straight after traveling was a private label e-commerce business where I manufactured and sold items on platforms such as Amazon. So from Amazon, then I started to learn the nuts and bolts of business and seeing the opportunities and getting my mentality in the right headspace, so to speak. And then I just the kind of penny just dropped, and I went, I love travel, I love trade. Why not do what I was doing and create something to give tradies the opportunity to do what I did for the last 3 years? But it's one of those things when you're like, oh, nobody would want to do that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And then you start telling people and talking to people, and they're like, that is amazing. Like, why? How did you do that? Where did you do that? How can I do that? And I was like, wow, this is something that I could create,
It's funny, isn't it? I remember I had a very similar experience when I landed in Canada for the first time, and we were basically at the hostel, and they were like, oh, we need this or this and this done and this and this. And I was like, I could do that easy. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm a plumber. I can fix that. And they're like, serious? I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, you can stay here if you can do that stuff. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And I did for a while. Then I got jack of that because I didn't want to work. I just wanted to ski and snowboard. So I threw it in. But mate, you're right. You can pretty much bounce around the world if you've got a trade behind you. So for anyone out there listening, thinking, oh yeah, but how can I travel as a tradie? Well, trust me, you can do it. I've been all over the world as a tradie.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity, especially because in Australia, we don't see it because we're in it, but we're regarded as some of the best skilled labor in the world. And people, one, everybody around the world loves Aussies. 2, you're a tradie, you're even more sought after. And 3, if you actually take the initiative and go, hey, this is what I do, and you have confidence in your skills, people love that. And people love you helping, and people want to help you as a result. That's kind of how the world works back to basic human needs, you know what I mean? An exchange, a trade. You have rice, I have a goat. I have skills, you have a bed. Let's exchange.
So just scaling back a bit, when you're talking about the e-commerce business, what were you selling?
So I had everything. So I had everything from office products to baby goods to, everything, garden supplies. And basically what I did was that was the first transition though. I hadn't touched a computer in 10 years. I picked up a computer and I was, it was basically just baby stepping. And I'm so glad that I did that to get me in the mentality and the mindset of that there's other options. And once you kind of you start to see opportunity everywhere. You start to see all these different avenues and your mind goes wild. You know what I mean? And I never had that. But when I started traveling, I met all these random people. It gave me that perspective. It gave me that insight. It gave me that outlook to get out of my little bubble.
So let's talk a little bit about Traveling Tradies, where you're at now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting model that you put together there, and to be honest, I think it's freaking awesome. So let's talk a bit about how that business works, what it is, who's it for, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so basically the business is I work with Australian traders, men and women of all trades. And basically what I do is I connect them to hotel and hostel owners around the world so that they can exchange their skills for food and accommodation, right?
Okay.
And this gives them an affordable but an epic cultural experience rather than just going on a Kentucky tour or going on booking a hotel and going in that. You lose the essence of travel when you don't communicate and connect with the locals, right?
Yeah.
Our whole point at Traveling Tradies is to become a local anywhere you go. Eat like a local, drink like a local, live like a local. Yeah. And the quickest way to do that is to get into the click. So what we provide is a connection for locals and travelers, right? And an exchange of a traveler's skills in exchange for what a host has, a bed, a food, local knowledge, local insight, etc. So, that's what we do, in the basis of it.
So a couple of questions. First of all, how does the business make money?
Yeah.
Second of all, where do you send people? Like, where does your list of places that you can send people to, or do they come to you and say, hey, I want to go here, find me somewhere?
Yeah, exactly. So both. So let me start with the revenue model at the moment. So the revenue model is, for the first, because we're still building our databases, a database of hosts and a database of tradies. And our website is basically a connection platform. Mm-hmm. So a tradie will create a profile and a host will create a profile. They meet on our site and connect and negotiate and go from there. Our proposed revenue model for that is a subscription base. But until we get a number of hosts and tradies, which we're setting the bar quite high, but it's what I want to do. We're building this database rapidly. So for the first, 1,000 tradies and 500 hosts, they're going to be, free services for a period of time before we start charging on a subscription base or a connection base as we go along. Okay. We haven't decided on an exact model because we want to test it with our customers first. Yeah. What are you guys willing to and want to pay for this connection? So it gives them access to be able to travel. And in regards to getting tradies to, we have destinations connected to our hosts, like hosts sign on, and then tradies can go onto the site and see where hosts want people. Yeah. Also, tradies come to us and say, hey, I want to go to Europe. I go, cool. We have a database that we're building that we can start connecting people according to their hobbies, needs, and wants. It's all good and well for somebody to say, I want to go to Europe, but you go, why do you want to go to Europe? Oh, I want to go to the desert. Well, why don't we go to Morocco instead? Or why don't you go to here? Or why don't you go to there? So basically what we do at Traveling Tradies is we also tailor destinations for people's hobbies, needs, and wants, right? If you're a surfer, I'll propose to you four destinations that are a surfer's haven. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we tailor it to our tradies, but also with the website, it's going to give access for tradies to be able to travel from one country to the next, according to what they want to do.
What do you do about legalities relating to travel, things like work visas and, all that kind of stuff, entering countries? Do you guys, facilitate that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, of course. So in regards to a lot of that, so Australia, as Australians, we have access to the H7 and H6 visa, mm-hmm. which gives in 40 plus countries us the ability to do things like exchange and work for a minimum amount mm-hmm. In these countries. So we're starting in those countries first, just because of the legality reasons. However, as we're building up in countries such as the Philippines, I was recently there talking to a bunch of hotel and hostel owners, and this came up, and they said, well, basically, you've got to speak to the local government. So what I did was I had a meeting with the local government, and I arranged a deal that instead of doing private small jobs for, one particular individual, we would do social work and community development. So skills workshops for the local tradesmen and things like that, which comes back into the core of what we're trying to do anyway. And that's, build sustainable cities and communities around the world and help people that need help. So we've got a few ties with that, but eventually we do want to have, I'm aiming to build our own working visa style so that we can have access to the rest of the 150 countries in the world.
That's cool. Because I suppose I'm just thinking, like, if there's no real exchange of money, then I suppose it's, you can effectively just do it on a travel visa, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So the H6 and H7 is the travel visa, which gives you access to 3 months in each country.
Right.
And that kind of gets through all the legalities. If there start to be resistance between, local tradesmen and things like that, we don't want to interfere with things like that. So we will rectify those situations very quickly.
So I suppose one of the questions that I have is, obviously a lot of your audience is typically going to be, I would imagine, the younger tradie, so somebody who's just sort of coming out of TAFE or coming out of tech or whatever they're doing in college, and then maybe looking to go explore a bit. How do you reach out to them?
Yeah, so our target market is from about 25 to 35. That's where we're aiming. The reason why is because the guys coming straight out of school and all that are still in the young, not all of them, but a lot of them are still in the young party mode where they want to just go and get drunk and explore and do that, which is fine. That's all cool. That's part of growing up and being young and stupid. But our target market is the guys that have been in the industry for a little bit longer, are really tired and worn out, the guys that are like questioning that there's got to be more. And that target market is usually the guys that I like to say have hit the quarter life crisis, the boys that want to explore and they start to question stuff. And it happens to all of us. Girls seem to go through it a lot earlier than guys, but guys hit that point where it's like, is this it? Like, is there got to be more? And I want to provide guys and girls with that opportunity to be able to have an outlet to be able to explore different avenues. Even the younger guys as well, but the ones that want to party and do all that, they're more targeted at the Kentucky side, where there's an exchange here as well, and it's about gaining perspective and an outlook.
So, what are some of the bigger? What's the most common question you get asked?
In regards to the actual business?
Well, yeah, in regards to people that are thinking about maybe going away, traveling, and have never really done anything like that before.
Yeah, exactly right. So when I tell them about the crux of the business, that it's an exchange, a lot of people think, well, I don't really want to work. I don't want to work. And you're like, well, it's an exchange. So you're basically their handyman for a couple of hours a day in exchange for cultural immersion, food, accommodation, tours, local knowledge, local skills. You get a bigger exchange, but it's hard to quantify and show tradies what it's about until they can experience it. A lot of people don't understand that about getting into the clique and about traveling. They think sitting in a hotel is traveling when it's really being a tourist. Yeah,
exactly right. And it's one of those, and I can absolutely 100% agree with what you're saying. If you don't submerge yourself in that culture, you're not really even there. Like I've done those trips where you go, you stay somewhere for a week or two and you leave, but it's not the same. Like if you're there for, 6 months, 12 months, that's when you really start to experience the place and you really do become part of the place.
Exactly right. You start being connected and people feel that as well. When these places that you go and exchange your skills, they know that you're one out. They know that you're on the other side of the world. They feel it. They're around travelers all the time.
Yeah.
So when they can see that and they go, hey, you know what? Come to my cousin's birthday. You feel that sense of inclusion, that sense of community, that sense of like connection. It's lovely. It's nice. It's amazing.
So what are some of the biggest bottlenecks in your business at the moment? Like where are you sort of, if you could wave a magic wand and fix something, where would it be?
Yeah, that's fair. Like we were speaking about earlier, Matty, just implementing the right systems and continually being able to pivot, which is because we're still small and growing, we're able to pivot quite easily, but it's all about moving easily and adapting to the obstacles that are arising and not getting stuck on things with my business because it is international and there's so many moving parts. You need to have certain systems, but you need to be able to pivot. So that's one of the things is just to maintain that ability to pivot easily and overcome these obstacles that arise.
Yeah, no, that sounds, I suppose there's always going to be the fundamental systems within the business, but as you say, when you're dealing with, corporations like governments.
Exactly right. There's always something that arises that you're like, that's a curveball.
So do you guys, I'm just curious, if I booked a holiday and went on a trip somewhere and, something happened, flights got delayed, cancelled, blah, blah, et cetera, the fallback would typically be the travel agent, something like that. Where do you guys stand in regards to support with those sort of things?
Yeah, of course. So basically, we aim to support every tradie that goes over, as well as the host on the other end. So we're actually partnering with a couple of companies at the moment, insurance companies at the moment, that will cover for all of these. So basically, part of the package that we want to offer for tradies going over is a tailored travel insurance that covers our guys for things like that.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, as well as insurances for the host side. We're in talks with a couple of insurance companies in regards to creating a tailored traveling tradies insurance that covers the host for damages, etc., and covers the tradies for flight delays, cutting off their finger, etc., etc.
Yeah. Okay. Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid. Things happen.
So, I mean, realistically, I suppose at this stage you're kind of in the startup stage, and you're probably wearing a lot of hats. Where do you find you're spending most of your time?
Lead generation, lead gathering, getting in front of the right eyeballs, exposure and awareness, creating that awareness in our space, in our target market. As you know, with tradies, there can be a lot of resistance, but it's trying to, everybody thinks everything's a scam. So until you can properly show them and implement them through, imagery and a lot more testimonials and build that reputation, there will always be resistance. But I'm not naive to think that it was going to happen overnight.
And so, I suppose with that in mind, where would you ideally, what role would you like to be seeing yourself within the business once it's a little bit more established?
Yeah, just a gatherer. So I love to travel. I'll always be traveling, and I've got a not negotiable goal with myself that I see 4 to 6 new countries every year for a minimum a month. And that is me not just going and having a holiday, but that is gathering partners. That is going to hosts and hostels, getting in front of conventions overseas. I was recently in one in Brazil. And things like that, just going and getting in front of the right eyeballs, talking, building that relationships and being that connector. Basically, the whole core of our business is to be a connector. And that's what I do best, is connecting with people and getting on their level and understanding their pain and finding a solution for them.
It's so cool. And it's a message I've been trying to communicate from the word go through the Site Shed. Where you begin is very rarely where you'll end up. And
Agreed.
Serving a trade. I've spoken at schools, and I've spoken with the Department of Education down in Canberra and all this kind of stuff, and trying to promote the idea that especially the kids out there, that they may not be coming from that academic background, and I was one of them, definitely. Like, I was never academic at school.
So was I.
Wouldn't by any measure say that I was an idiot, but I just didn't really slot into that academic profile, But
yeah, agreed.
It's not the end of the world, there are so many options, and doing a trade is such a great one that can open so many windows of opportunity to you. But I think just getting over that initial barrier of resistance, and very often that barrier of resistance comes from parents.
Agreed.
So the question that I'm leading into is, do you get feedback, or do you get resistance from, kids that may want to go traveling from their parents?
Not as of yet, which is surprising, because a lot of parents, especially in my generation and this age group, a lot of them are starting to understand, and a lot of guys and girls are getting that want to need to explore. I'm from a very old school traditional Italian family where it was like, you grow up, you finish school, you go to uni, you buy a house, you get married, you settle down, that's it. So it was daunting, especially for my family, to just disappear. And that was always that, the family will always be there, especially if you're close with your family, which I am. They're almost sad to see you go for so long, but they also realize and understand as you get older that it's your life and your journey. And you'll be surprised. The biggest resistance I thought I would have would be from employers, but it's actually been the opposite. A lot of employees themselves have traveled, and they're like, you know what, guys, go. You're burnt out, you're tired. Go for a few months, come back, and you'll be refreshed, rejuvenated, etc. And that for me was music to my ears. I was like, well, that's amazing, because it happened to me as well. But it's almost the fear. Like, I think a lot of tradies make excuses as to why they don't travel because of friends and family and employers, but it's just an excuse, I think.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Get out there and do it, kids, for sure.
Yeah, get it done. You never go, you never know.
Exactly. So what's the best advice you've ever been given?
A few, actually. Probably the best one that I've heard from Tim Grover is decide, commit, act, succeed, and repeat. And that for me was huge, because it's always that, especially with travel, I do that. It's like, stop talking about it and just go.
Yeah.
Decide, commit, go, have a great time and repeat. Same with business. Decide on something, commit, act, succeed, repeat. Certain tasks, certain goals, whatever it is, that for me is something that I can implement in basically any area of my life. And another one my old man used to say to me a lot when I was younger was, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
And I always resented that because I am very fly kind of guy, and I've always been spontaneous and like, yeah, okay, whatever. Never really planned, never really felt the need to plan. It was almost that resistance. And then when I started my own business and things like that, it was like, you've really got to start planning.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's sort of, there's pros and cons. Oh, well, I won't say pros and cons, but yeah, I mean, especially what I loved about traveling and not really being tied to a itinerary of any description was having that freedom to wake up in the morning and go, well, you know, I like it. I like being in this place. I'm just going to stay here another week. You know, whereas sometimes if you've over planned the travel itinerary too much, then you're kind of stuck to sticking to that sort of, you know, that route. That okay, well, I have to leave tomorrow because I've got a ticket. You know, but whereas
100%.
You know, whereas when you sort of got a bit more freedom and you can kind of do what you want, it just sort of makes that experience a whole lot better.
100%.
On the flip side, when you're traveling, you definitely want to plan out, I suppose, what we spoke about before, things like your traveling visas and things like finances and, you know, okay, I need to get here, I can only spend so much money. That's like, that kind of stuff is important. But
yeah,
I think for the better part, the leaving your itinerary open is fun.
Yeah, exactly right. But that's the thing that we offer with Traveling Tradies as well, is we have our core product, which is a methodology called Frames. And basically what it is it helps a tradie that's never been overseas before and has no idea what to do to get fully prepared for everything, including visas, vaccinations, your finances, what to pack, what to bring. We provide them with a Traveling Tradies pack with your backpack, so you can just rock up to the airport with your jocks and socks. So that's the whole point, is we want to help these guys do it, because I know what's involved. And I've been through that, ripping your hair out beforehand, not realizing where your money is, what's going on with your visas, blah, 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 blah. It can be quite stressful. You want to take that stress out for tradies and go, it's not that hard. We've got you. We got your back. Let's do this together, so that when you're overseas, you don't have to plan, like you said, every night of accommodation. When I go overseas, I plan the first night or the first second.
Yeah.
That's it. And then I let the rest unfold, because you go to a place, you might not like it, you might love it. It depends. And I never put dates on things, because you, like you said, you get lost in the journey of going somewhere random that you never thought you would end up.
The best way to find a place is to get lost in it. That's what I've always said.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So let's talk about routine and habits. I've found, especially through running a business, it's been one of the biggest paradigm shifts for me, and it's paid off in tenfold, you know, having routines and habits. What are some of the habits that you've implemented into your lifestyle or business that are reaping rewards?
Yeah. So every morning I wake every morning quite early. I have lemon water or apple cider vinegar and water. First thing I do is I get up, I have that, and it kind of just gives me that wake up kick in the face. Then I do a 10 or 15 minute meditation, and then a 5-minute yoga stretch just to get my body kind of limber. And then I have a small morning mantra that I do. It takes me 30 seconds. And then while I'm having a cold shower, I'll listen to like a small motivational video to just get me in the mindset before I even turn my phone on. Like, I have my phone on flight mode overnight, and I just get into that mindset before I even start the day. And then I hit the ground running for the day. I do a quick plan of exactly what I need done, at least two major tasks of the day, and then smaller ones in between. And then I just, hit the ground running and make sure that I implement and finish what I need to.
So zen.
Yeah, it's taken a while. But this is what I find works for me, because if I don't have that guide, and I don't have that recharge in the morning, I feel lost. I feel scattered, and I'm not productive as much as I want to. And call it mental mindset, call it whatever, but it just works for me.
One of the biggest things that tradies struggle with today is that, I've got to get up and I've got to leave home at 6 a.m. because I've got to be on site by 7. I've got to drive an hour. That just go from the, go the whole way. But and probably not necessarily tradies either. It's probably completely not reflective of industry whatsoever. But I think taking that time for yourself to plan the day and set things out that you want to do, it's so important. And I recommend, even if you are one of those guys that has to be on site, at 7 a.m., even just do it when you get to site. Like, just take 5 minutes, sit back. What's important? Set a list. Lists are the best things, like an actionable task list for the day, putting things in priority. Because even if you go through ticking off one or two of them, it still makes such a massive difference, just those little bite-sized chunks.
Yeah, the compounding effect. And
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
something that's, resonated with me a lot, is even on those days where you're like, I just can't even move. I can't even just do those little tasks that will compound to result into something good down the track. And that was, like you were saying before, you need some kind of like a cornerstone in the morning just to get your head straight. Like you get up straight away and you're scrolling on Facey, your mind's already scattered. You need to have that 5 minutes to wake up and adjust and and go from there,
What are you reading at the moment?
Reading a book called Killing Giants, and it's by an author called Stephen Denny, and it's basically about going into an industry that's in an arena full of giants. So basically, for me, it resonates because the travel industry is quite large and full, and there's a lot of things out there. So it's having that, ability to have speed and pivoting easy and being able to target, our niche is quite small and concise, and it's a market that still has a lot of potential.
Yeah, trust me, niching is the best thing you'll ever do.
Yeah, agreed.
If you try to be everything to everyone, like if you were just doing this traveling business owners, you
get lost in the noise. Yeah.
Well, exactly. You'd never get the traction. It's just so much smarter to target into a niche.
Yeah.
What about podcasts? What podcasts do you like?
Yeah, a few. So Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu, the Dent Podcast, which is a good business one as well.
Yeah.
The Site Shed, of course, TED Talks, Tim Ferriss's podcast, Basic Bananas, and one I've recently got into is called How I Built This, which is Guy Raz, the guy that did all TED Talks and the TED Radio Hour. And it's really cool. It goes into basically it's like a 30 or 40-minute podcast about businesses like Ben & Jerry's and Instagram and just all these businesses you don't really know much about the founders, and it gives a good insight into their story.
So we're getting towards the end now. I just want to ask a few more questions. I suppose, first of all, relative to finding new customers, what are some of the best things you've done to get to find new customers?
Yeah, well, for our market especially, it's getting in front of the right eyeballs, getting in front of the guys, getting them to feel my passion and my drive rather than through a screen or through a poster. It's getting in front of them and going, guys, I've been where you are, right? Traveling Tradies is built by a tradie for tradies because I feel you. Like I get what you're going through and I want to tailor for tradies and differentiate from competitors because what we do is for tradies. It's designed for guys and girls like me.
Yeah.
So yeah, just getting in front of the right eyeballs, getting in front of the right target audience and just getting our message out there and getting people to make their own decision because we're solving their problem that they have.
I suppose the question that I was really asking was, how do you get in front of those eyeballs?
Yeah, so running events and partnering, getting on things like here, for the exposure and the awareness on certain podcasts, running events and joint ventures, all on social media as well, where we're rapidly building our pages and our following. And yeah, just partnerships is a big one for us. We've partnered with companies like La Trobe Uni. La Trobe Uni support us now, which is great, and a few international companies and humanitarian organizations that we're building towards as well.
What are your favorite tools, apps, business related, CRMs, that kind of thing that you're using?
Yeah. So I use Evernote a lot. I love Evernote just because it keeps me organized.
You're a Tim Ferriss disciple, aren't you?
Yeah, I actually didn't hear it from him, but I love Evernote. I'm a big Evernote fan. And Slack, I love Slack just because I've got developers overseas and an assistant overseas in the Philippines as well. So it's easy to communicate and manage a team through Slack.
CRM?
CRM, I use Woodpecker and MailChimp, but I need to upgrade from one of them because they're not ticking all my boxes at the moment. What do you use, Matty?
We use HubSpot for lead and deal tracking, ActiveCampaign for email automation, email marketing. That also does deal tracking as well. We've got a number of tools like project management. We'll use Asana and then Podio as well for podcast-related stuff. So we've got a few tools that we've refined over the years. But it's an ongoing search.
It is. It always is. And this is what I mean. You come across something and then you learn and then you tweak and then it doesn't have something that you want, so you go to something else.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I suppose getting towards the end of this now, I'd like to ask you, what's the one thing that you would recommend to guys, or what, in your experience, what's been the best thing that you've done in order to differentiate yourself from potential competitors or other people in the marketplace?
Yeah, so just by providing constant value and providing a service that our market wants, providing, an ideal solution for tradies, and just being authentic and solving the problem for our ideal customer, and just always getting feedback from our clients, which we always do. I always have surveys. Every conversation that I have, I'm like, hey, what about this? Or what did you like about that? Or why was there resistance? Because I want to continuously refine and tweak according to my target market.
What does the future hold?
Wow, that's a good question. I want to... For the business, I want to expand into over 100 countries. I want to have 10,000 hotel and hostel owners on our database and at least 5,000 tradies in the next 24 months. Personally for me, like I said before, I want to go to 4 to 6 new countries a year. But ultimately for traveling tradies, we want to branch out and we want to create Tradies Without Borders. So much like Doctors and Engineers Without Borders, will provide skilled labor across the world to not only educate societies in need, but help influence things like innovation and infrastructure, and therefore create sustainable cities, communities all around the globe.
I suppose one thing I didn't ask you was in relation to qualifications. So I know, when I lived in the UK, even though I was a fully licensed Australian plumber, there was still certain things that I couldn't practice over there, like gas, for example. You need to have your corgi and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What's the process around that when you're sending somebody to a country that may require a different skill set?
Yeah, exactly right. So the majority of countries, but a few certain tasks you can't do. So where we're targeting is the smaller jobs. Like I said, we're not going to send guys over to rough in a whole new house and do gas works and things like that. It's more the smaller handyman task.
Gotcha.
Where this is where I want to clarify with tradies is you're not working. It's not a job. You're going there to help a friend out,
right?
Basically, that'll help you out in return for certain little odd jobs to paint a wall or fix a few leaking taps or fix a broken door, things like that.
So, Adam, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, beautiful. So we've got the website, www.travellingtradies.com. Email me at adam@travellingtradies.com. We also have the Facebook page, facebook.com/TheTravellingTradies, and our Instagram, which is travelling.tradies, and travelling with a double L.
Cool. Well, anyway, I'll put some links to that within the show notes. So any listeners out there want to get hold of Adam, you can head across to this episode and you will find all of those links where you can get hold of him.
Beautiful.
Final question. Who would you like to see interviewed on the Site Shed next?
Yeah, good question.
And I add a caveat to that. I'm going to ask you for an introduction, so don't say Donald Trump.
Nah, no problem. There's a friend of mine, Shay Spence. He actually runs a contracting business from Colombia, and we have a lot of similarities, and I think you get along with him as well. He has a trade background. He's had a contracting business for quite a number of years, and he had the same mentality as us, and he's been overseas now for quite some time, and he still runs his business from there. So I think he'd be an interesting character to talk to.
He lives in Colombia?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So it's a cool differentiation from other contracting businesses.
Absolutely. All right, mate. Well, thanks. It's been a good chat. Thanks for your time. Beautiful,
Matty. Thanks for your time too.
And for the listeners out there, if you enjoyed this podcast or if you know anybody that maybe has a travelling itch, then by all means do send it across to them, because this is the perfect opportunity to make their dreams become a reality. And otherwise, head across to the show notes where you can get access to all the links that we spoke about, and we'll be talking to you in a following episode. That is a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.